The following programming is sponsored by Clean and Sober Media. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or Beasley Media Group.
If you need immediate help, please call the National Substance Abuse and Mental Health Hotline at 1-800-662-HELP. When you gonna let me get sober? Let me go home and start over. Welcome to Clean and Sober Radio. Brought to you in part by Jefferson University Hospitals and Thomas Jefferson University, providing excellent clinical and compassionate care in the Philadelphia region. A proven leader in healthcare and education since 1825. And now, here are your hosts, Gary Hendler and Mark Sigmund.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining us, and welcome to Clean and Sober Radio. Clean and Sober Radio features real people with real stories about addiction to drugs and alcohol. Mark Sigmund, what do you have this week in recovery news?
Well, the Surgeon General has come out today and recommended that alcoholic beverages carry warning labels about cancer risks, noting that the consumption of alcohol increases the risk of 7 types of cancer. Basically, they're coming out and they're saying that they believe alcohol is linked to over 100,000 cancer cases per year. 16.4% of all breast cancers are caused by alcohol, as well as the other things like 13,500 deaths. And what they're seeing is that the body breaks alcohol down into a chemical in the body called Yes, we got to get it. We got to get our guys on this one.
It's okay. It's
okay. Breaks it down to this cancer-causing hormone in the body. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, this is real stuff. I mean, they came out and they're recommending this. So whatever studies they're looking at, it's coming back.
You know, when I read that this morning, I couldn't believe it.
Yes, and you wonder our cancer rates have gone through the roof.
Right.
Right, and you wonder, I mean, I think pesticides and all kinds of things have something to do with that. But you really wonder whether alcohol is one of the big culprits behind this.
Really? You know, when I read that this morning, I read it to Marjorie, and she said, what's the source? Because it could have been some crazy stuff from somebody, but it was the New York Times.
It's the New York Times. It's all over. I mean, and coming right from the Surgeon General. So it's almost like people get cigarettes that have a Surgeon General's warning. Now alcohol is going to have the same thing, quite possibly.
Good.
So
that's great. I wonder if anybody really cares.
Well, that's the thing, and I'm sort of a conspiracy theorist because I'm always wondering like who got who angry, and you know, in terms of like the government stuff, because I'm always wondering like how do they know these numbers?
Yeah, I know.
You know,
we were talking about that before the show started.
But we all recommend staying away from alcohol.
Absolutely.
So,
that's the word.
That's the big thing.
That's the
right?
word. Yeah, that's the word. So, all right, like it's a new year, 2025. Is it 2025? Is that what it is?
It's 2025.
All right. So let's start this year off, first of all, wishing everybody a happy and healthy new year. The great things, please stay sober, do the right thing, conduct yourself properly, and make it a good year for everybody. And speaking of money, Clean and Sober Radio, we're running our drive that we have to raise money. Please go on our website, cleanandsoberbroadcasting.com, and make a donation. There's a button to push. Just please help us out, okay? Hey, when we come back, former District Attorney of Philadelphia and our dear, dear friend, Seth Williams, is with us, and we're going to get the whole story about this fabulous dude, all right? We'll be right back.
This is Clean and Sober Radio.
A cancer diagnosis can knock the wind out of you. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health can help. Our brand new Asplund Cancer Pavilion brings you 86,000 square feet of cancer-fighting science for truly comprehensive care. Backed by the strength of an NCI-designated cancer center. Call 1-800-JEFF now. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health. The power to out-science cancer.
What's happening? Brandon Novak here from Those Movies Jacks, or author of that addiction memoir, Dream Seller. Do me a favor and tune into Clean and Sober Radio with Gary Hendler.
888-728-9941. This is Clean and Sober Radio.
And welcome back. You found us, Clean and Sober Radio. You either found us on your radio, You found us on your phone. You found us on your computer. Where else could they find us?
Download the podcast. Go to the iTunes store or wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to Clean and Sober Radio, and it will be delivered every week to your inbox.
Absolutely.
And it's actually one of the top 10% of downloaded podcasts in the world.
Our show?
Yes. I looked up the numbers. And I don't know if it was a legitimate website, but that's
Who
what
cares,
it said.
Mark?
You know what I mean?
Who cares?
Yes.
Just roll with it.
Roll with it.
Hey, you
Don't
hear that
think?
voice that coming out? That's
It's
Seth
our
Williams.
man.
Seth, welcome Clean and Sober Radio again, man.
Always
Hey,
a pleasure
Seth.
to be here with you.
It's always a pleasure to have you here. Seriously.
very much.
You got a great story. We're going to get into it. I just want to mention one thing. The trivial question for the week. Okay?
Let's hear it.
What was the pharmaceutical number on the drug called Quaalude? It was stamped right on it. I'll bet we get a big. You have to be a certain age.
You do have to be a certain age because they were gone when I was coming up, But I think I know the answer to this, but I'm not going to say
All right, don't say it. So let's do that. Also, all of our listeners, viewers, please, when you respond to us and you have your comments, please let us know where you are at the time you send your acknowledgement.
Yes.
Something like that.
We'd love to hear it.
We'd love to hear. Hey, Seth, welcome to the show, buddy.
Welcome, Seth.
How are you?
You know,
Gary?
and happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
So let me just read a little bit in Wikipedia.
Yeah, okay.
we just had a conversation about Wikipedia, how
Anyone can go on there and edit it and say
and
whatever they
it's
want.
so
and change
unreliable.
things.
And Seth said
okay,
to fix it.
all right. So right now, you're going to tell me right now if we're wrong. Seth Williams was born in Philadelphia.
Wrong.
Wrong. Okay, that's the first. That's wrong. Where were you born?
I was born in Lansdale, Pennsylvania.
All right, I'm going to change it when I go back. All right. All right. We're gonna go over this whole thing. He formerly served. We're going to jump all around, but he formerly served as an assistant district attorney. You were the first African American district attorney in Philadelphia and in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
That's true.
Big deal. Let's see. You were put up for adoption at birth.
Yes.
And you were placed in 2 foster homes. And I'll get to, Seth's going to tell you the end of that, but it's an amazing, amazing story. You're adopted and you grew up in West Philadelphia.
Correct.
You were the only child of Rufus, a teacher at Sulzberger Middle School, and his wife, Amelda, a secretary at the Philadelphia Naval Yard. That were your parents.
Those are correct. That's
Right?
correct.
Okay. You graduate. This is like I'm putting it out, and we're getting the feedback right now. Seth graduated from Central High School in 1985.
Correct. June the
Okay.
17th.
Accurate.
What, June what?
June the 17th.
All right, I'll make that
1985.
correction later. And you attended Penn State, where you served as president of the Penn State Student Black Caucus, the underground student government. As a student activist, you led a 102-mile march to the state capitol in Harrisburg to get Penn State to divest from South Africa. You graduated from Georgetown University Law School also after
Correct.
Penn State in 1992.
Correct. May the 25th.
All right, we'll fix. I'll change all that later on.
I'm
okay?
taking notes.
You're taking notes?
Yes.
Wow. Right off the bat, wow. I mean, I've never been adopted. I'm assuming it's disruptive in some way. And you have accomplished incredible things. We didn't even get to the part where you became district attorney. We will. But what do you think drove you to be so successful and so politically an activist? What do you think? What did you see something? Did you hear something that made you feel, hey, I want to give back?
Well, it's interesting. Every year on New Year's Day, I watch Trading Places. So the question always is it nurture or nature? But I think it's definitely a combination of both.
Yeah.
And I'm working on my first book right now, A Man of Convictions. My second book is going to be about, it's called My Father's Son, how I'm the combination both of genetically of my biological father and the nurture of my adoptive parents. But I would think that at every step of my life, I found myself either as the class president, the student council president in 8th grade, the quarterback on the football team in high school. I was, as you mentioned, I was the president of the Black Caucus at Penn State. My senior year, I was the president of the student government. I was the president of the Civic Association and Town Watch in my neighborhood, the head altar boy, all those things. But it wasn't as a result of some sort of Napoleonic desire to conquer. It's primarily as a result of every night at dinner, as a result of the example of my adopted father, Rufus Williams. But every night, one way or the other, he would say, unless you're willing to be a part of the solution, you forfeit your right to complain. So it was just ingrained in me that, if there's an issue or a problem, it's not enough. You can't just talk about it. You have to be about the solution. So his life example was how he led his life was completely enmeshed, inseparable, inextricably bound from his spirituality and what he thought that he was supposed to do as a result of his Christian faith.
Oh, that's really, it really is amazing how parents can either screw you up or lift you up.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're very fortunate to have these guys as parents.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. As I mentioned, I was given up for adoption at birth, and I lived originally in an orphanage when they still called them orphanages, and then 2 foster homes, and I was blessed to be adopted by Rufus and Imelda Williams. My father was a school teacher. He came home every day from teaching school, and he made sure I did my homework. We had dinner together. Then he took a nap, and he went to his second job, where he worked at a recreation center every night from 6 to 10 p.m., where he coached basketball, played ping pong with kids, did arts and crafts, showed movies on Monday nights. And every summer, he ran a day camp for Fairmount Park. So his whole life was about trying to help develop and improve the quality of life for young people in our city. And I tell people that despite me becoming the district attorney, I know that my father did much more than I'll ever do to actually prevent crime and to reduce recidivism as a result of the direct impact he had on lives.
How old were you when you found out you were adopted?
I was 11.
Tell me, they sat you down to tell.
I was a student at Friends Central, which is not far from where we are right now.
You went to all good
I was blessed.
schools.
I was my parents' only extravagance, right? They were just middle class folks, but they spent their money sending me to the best private school they could, and I went to Friends Central. And anyway, I was 11. I was chosen to be a part of this organization called the Children's International Summer Village. So I was going to Copenhagen, Denmark for the summer to help promote world peace through children.
How old were you?
11.
Whoa.
And
I didn't even know where I didn't know where Copenhagen was at 11.
So my parents sat me down just to have one of these talks about, you're going out to the world and if somebody touches you this way, you have to tell somebody, all this, this is a bizarre, they're sitting me down. And then during this conversation, my father left and my mom started telling me about how much she loved me. And then it just drifted off. I think she had been drinking a little bit. It was very emotional, and it drifted off to her starting to talk about how she had been pregnant in the 50s. I'm like, you've been pregnant? I don't know where this is going. I'm 11. But she had been prescribed a drug called flumitamide, which in the 50s caused birth defects. And so she had an emergency hysterectomy when the baby was time to be born. The doctors allowed the child to die at birth, right? And she had an emergency hysterectomy. And so it's in that, I'm like trying to figure out what's going on, and then pivot and told me how they always wanted a child, and they for years tried to adopt, and then they adopted me. And that's how I found out when I was 11.
Can you remember the setting where you were, the whole bit?
The kitchen. I remember everything, the lighting, everything. And my entire life, my mother was very light-skinned. She was born in Galveston, Texas. Her family was Creole from Louisiana and East Texas. And my father was very dark-skinned, African-American. My first name, as you know, was Rufus.
Yeah.
I was named for my father, who was named for his father's favorite uncle, who was a runaway slave. But I looked like my complexion was right between my parents, and all my relatives in Louisiana looked just like me. So I had no reason to think that I was not their biological child.
But did you understand what adoption meant?
I did. But then it as a result of that, I began to have all types of abandonment issues, fear of rejection, which as I got older led to my abusing alcohol, and more specifically, more than just an abuse of alcohol, seeking affirmation and seeking
from women,
seeking to feel wanted by someone when I felt the stresses that cause other people to either overeat, become addicted to gambling, or abuse alcohol or drugs. So my way of numbing myself was trying to find a sense of affirmation.
That's and it's Mark. It's so logical that's what would happen. That's what the effect would be.
Yeah.
Being told that these people are not your parents.
Right.
Well, it's
then I wondered, well, why didn't those other people want me?
Right.
Yeah.
Why was I not wanted? Why was I not good enough? Was what I always wondered. And so later, when I would have conflict with my girlfriend or the wife became the ex-wife, if I felt rejected or abandoned, possibly irrationally, but if that's what I felt, then I needed to quickly try to numb myself from that. And the way I did it, I needed to feel wanted by someone, which, if you're in a relationship, a monogamous relationship, leads to bad decisions.
And also, I would imagine, sorry to interrupt you, you would always feel, especially, let's say it's about women, when are they going to leave me?
Correct. Right.
When are they
So
going to
then you
leave me?
self-sabotage relationships.
Absolutely.
Well,
What was I
and
gonna say?
the crazy thing about it is like with adoption, one of the most traumatic hardest traumas a lot of times is when it happens at a really young age, like ages 1 to 3 and things. And
Child psychiatrists say that the child needs that bonding between the mother and the child happens in utero. And then when they never get to actually bond physically outside of that, it causes all types of deleterious effect on the child.
Yeah. Hey, if you're just joining us now, we were talking with former district attorney of Philadelphia, and we'll get into, Seth was a district attorney, but that's not who you are. That's not the only thing you've done. So I sort of have to correct myself when I keep saying former district attorney. It does sound good, but it's not the whole picture. Okay. Anyway, that's who we're talking to right now. If you want to give us a call and talk to Seth Williams, call us at 1-888-728-9941. That's 1-888-728-9941. Just had to get that in. If I don't get that in, the producer calls me and says,
every
people
Thursday
only listen for 4 or 5 minutes. You better keep introducing your guest.
There you go. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So growing up, did you have a lot of friends? I mean, what were you like? Were you a bad kid?
Not at all.
You were goody two shoes?
I was. Yes.
What?
I was the only child. Everybody in my neighborhood knew my parents. So it was almost like being the preacher's kid in the neighborhood. I couldn't do wrong because everybody would tell my parents about it.
Yeah.
But I had a wonderful childhood. I had great friends. I was fortunate, like as I mentioned, I was raised Catholic. My father was the son of an AME minister, but he converted to Catholicism when he married my mother. They sent me to a Quaker school where about 80% of my classmates were Jewish.
Yeah, of course.
And so I really grew up appreciating different people's faith and respecting them and being very interested in learning as much as possible about different faiths.
Who was tougher, your mother or your father?
Tougher? In what way?
On you. Who's the disciplinarian?
I think my mother was a disciplinarian, but I never wanted to let my father down. My father didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he didn't curse, right? But after serving in World War II, he went down to Galveston and met a young Creole girl that did all three of those things and often.
Your mom?
Yes. So my father wouldn't raise his voice, but if I let him down, if he would say to me, "You've let me down," I could almost want to cry just thinking about it.
That was worse than
any
punishment
or 2x4 across the jaw.
Yeah.
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 So but my mother, she was she screamed and hollered and was very emotional. All 4'11" of her.
4'11".
But my mother, she was the executive secretary at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard.
Wow.
And she would have told you that there's a new admiral every 3 years. But she was always the boss.
I believe it.
Is that what she would say?
Yeah, that's what she would say.
Oh, that is great. So, all right, so you went to great undergraduate schools. I mean, I know friends.
Well, I went to West Point originally out of high school. I was there for 197 days.
What
and I tell
happened?
people I got a a medical discharge. They found out I was allergic to calculus and chemistry.
Oh, there you go.
So then I transferred and I went to Penn State.
So the rumor about you being a 4-star general is not true?
No.
No.
I was a major, though, in the United States Army.
You're major?
I was, in the JAG Corps.
In the what corps?
Judge Advocate General's Corps. So I was
okay.
a lawyer in the Army. You've heard of airborne?
Yes.
I was chairborne.
Okay.
So you had to get good grades undergraduate to get into law school.
I did. Yeah.
Why'd you want to become a lawyer?
Well, I think originally I wanted to be a priest. My first job, I wanted to be an architect because the dad on the Brady Bunch was an architect and it seemed cool. He had a nice house. They had a maid, lived in the house. I wanted to be a priest. Then I wanted to be more like my own father than a father, and you can't do that if you're a Catholic priest. Then I really wanted to be a doctor, but then the calculus and the math got in the way. And I thought that as an attorney, I could advocate and try to help people and shape policy and do things that I thought could help. And so that was the path that I went down.
Was law school difficult for you?
No. I mean, I really enjoyed being in Washington, D.C. I loved going to Georgetown Law School specifically.
Great law school.
It was very interesting. It was challenging. It was fun in some ways. As with businesses, they say the 3 most important words in any business is location, location, location. I think the same is true with a law school. So going to law school in Washington, D.C., I would just read the Washington Post, and it might say on this thing called the Federal page that the House Judiciary Committee was debating capital punishment. I would just go and listen and sit there, or I just go something. So I just loved being in D.C.
You had the desire, it sounds like all through your upbringing, to learn, to promote yourself, to do good, and to have a better life.
I mean, I really attribute a lot of that, though, of course, again, back to nurture versus nature, to the nurture of my parents. But I tell people, we have these little phones now that have all types of stuff on it. But as a kid, my parents invested in the World Book Encyclopedia, and I had the encyclopedia in my room.
Yeah.
And so at night, when it was time to go to sleep, I could just pick out, the L volume, and I just read it and look at the pictures and learn. And so, like today, my kids will joke, like, how do you know all? My nephew was like, how do you know all? You sound like an encyclopedia. I'm like, yeah, well, my parents had the World Book Encyclopedia for me.
A friend of mine says, readers are leaders.
Yeah.
It's true. You had a natural desire to absorb information.
It's very inquisitive.
Very inquisitive.
Wanted to find the answers.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, listen, so if
and we want people to be critical thinkers, not just to accept what other people tell them, but to go find your own sources and gather your own information.
Yeah, interesting. So, as I said before, so you can watch us do the show live if you go on the Facebook and go to our page, Clean and Sober Radio, and we have a list of people that are watching us live right now, and I'd like to acknowledge them, and hopefully they will tell us where they're coming from. All right, Kathy Collin is what? Debbie Reynolds, John Logue, Kathy Wolf Collin from Coral Springs, Florida. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. John Logue, hi to Mark, Gary, and Seth. Happy New Year, gentlemen, from Malvern, which is Chester County, Pennsylvania, which is outside of Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. Suzanne Duncan. Mike Hepp. What's up, boys?
Mike.
Happy New Year. Mike Hepp, our buddy. We got to get him back on here.
We really do have to get him
years.
back on. It's been a long time.
Now, we have one answer to my question of what is the pharmaceutical number on a Quaalude. And John Logue is the winner with 714.
Yeah, 714.
714. What we'll do, we'll send him that.
Match by that car.
A car. He gets a car.
Yes,
All right, we'll get him a car.
Matchbox.
Allison Price Berwick is watching. Todd Klotz. Jerry Gordon. Jerry, what's up, buddy? Allison Price Berwick. Love, be part of the solution. Judge Christopher Maddox is watching. Is he our favorite judge or our second favorite?
Really, well, we have
It's a tie between he and Andrea Duffy, right?
Yeah. Well, if I don't want to say anything, if Andrea is listening, we've just been closer to Judge Maddox.
We love them
recently.
both.
We do.
We love them both. Marjorie Hendler is watching. Surprise. Chris Maddox from Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania. New Hope, Pennsylvania for Allison Price Berwick. And I think we're ready for a break. All right, we'll be right back with Seth Williams.
This is Clean and Sober Radio.
cancer diagnosis can knock the wind out of you. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health can help. Our brand new Asplund Cancer Pavilion brings you 86,000 square feet of cancer-fighting science for truly comprehensive care. Backed by the strength of an NCI-designated cancer center. Call 1-800-JEFF now. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health. The power to out-science cancer.
Hey everybody, this is former Philadelphia Flyer Chris Terrian, and you're listening to Clean and Sober Radio.
888-728-9941. This is Clean and Sober Radio.
Hey, we're back. Thanks for rejoining us, Clean and Sober Radio out of Philadelphia. Okay, you were elected District Attorney of Philadelphia on November the 3rd, 2009. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, good. Whew. Mark.
And I was sworn in January the 4th, 2010 as the 24th district attorney in the history of Philadelphia and the first African-American to serve as a district attorney in the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
And that is correct.
That is correct.
Okay, and that is correct. During your period in office, you did a lot of other things. You served as adjunct professor at Temple and Villanova.
And Penn.
Okay, we'll put that in later.
And Newman University and Penn State Abington.
Okay, I got Penn State Abington here. I definitely have it. You were a major in the Judge Advocate General's Corps, United States Army, which you mentioned.
Correct.
What does that mean?
So I was a lawyer in the United States Army.
Yeah.
And it's called the Judge Advocate General's Corps.
You went in as lieutenant then?
I went in as a first lieutenant. That's correct.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, and you dealt with cases.
Yeah, we prosecuted people, defended people. We did operational law. I did legal assistance. I was in Germany 4 times, Italy for 1 tour, helping soldiers and their families with all types of legal issues. Very interesting stuff. I really enjoyed it.
Boy, as district attorney, what was that like? What did it feel like? I mean, if it was me, I'd be like, oh, man, look at the power I got right now. Okay? There must be a little bit of that when you are the top legal person in the 4th largest city in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, it affects everybody maybe differently.
Yeah, okay.
I know me personally, it felt very lonely.
At the top.
Yeah, because you can't time close to 60,000 cases a year. But because of the politics in Philadelphia and just all these other things, there's very few people you can actually talk to about your own problems. In politics, people try to use anything against you. So in many ways, like people would think that my old friends, my old friends thought I must have new friends. But the fact was, I was just isolated. I almost had no friends.
Yeah. But you had your old friends, right?
Well,
or were they still weird? Were they weird with you also? I mean,
nobody was weird necessarily, but I was just so consumed with the responsibility of the job and, making the decisions on who's going to get the death penalty and not. And
what was
meetings with, all the meetings for everybody from the governor to the mayor to the police commissioner and all the community groups. And it was just a lot to deal with.
A lot of unbelievable amount of responsibility. Did you prosecute anybody and sentenced to death?
Yes.
Or life?
Yeah, many people.
What, Mark? I know you're interested in this. What does that feel like? What?
Well, I mean, in practice, I am, and in theory, I don't know how you would say it, but I'm opposed to the death penalty.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I thought that it was the law of the Commonwealth, and it was not my job to change the law necessarily. If the state legislature and the governor were to change it, that's different. But, so I thought it was my job to ensure that only the people that were clearly guilty, but those that all the aggravating factors were met, that we would request it. And I came up with a method. I came up with a capital case review committee to ensure that we didn't just request the death penalty for cases to get a death-qualified jury and more likely to get a conviction, but to have a systemic way of doing it the same way each time so that, we would try to apply the law fairly to everyone. But again, the criminal justice system is flawed. any system that we can create as humans is going to be fallible, and there's going to be mistakes made. And that's why I also created a conviction review unit to investigate any allegation of factual innocence.
In 2011, you had a major case in Philadelphia against Dr. Kermit Gosnell.
Yeah.
And for our listeners, this was a physician who was aborting babies right up to the end, and then severing their spinal cords and storing them in his refrigerator, something crazy like that. You were you prosecuted that case.
Yeah, so it began originally as an undercover narcotics investigation because he was also running a pill mill for people that had either become addicted to painkillers, but he was prescribing opioids illegally.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it began as an undercover investigation into that. And
From the city of Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so while our detectives and investigators were investigating that internally, they've, lo and behold, discovered that he was also operating an illegal abortion clinic. And then we can all discuss and debate the morality of abortion, right?
Yeah.
Pro-life, pro-choice. Reasonable
Yes.
people can differ. But what he would do is that he would, women would come there 8th month, 9th month, and based on how much money you could pay him, he would give you painkillers, but he would give a medicine, I forget the name of it, that would dilate the pregnant woman, inducing labor.
Right.
The child would be born, and in many cases, he would then, what he called the snip, he would actually stab them in their spinal cord and snip their spinal cord.
Oh.
And that clearly is homicide. That is not an abortion, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we charged him with 8 counts of that, and it was just horrific. What they discovered in his lab, how he treated the women that were there, that in many ways were the most vulnerable people at the time, is all very difficult. And again, dealing with that case, looking at the photographs, looking at the homicide photographs from all the homicide cases, it was very difficult for me to deal with. When I was a young assistant district attorney for a year, I prosecuted in juvenile court, family court, right? And the majority of those cases I prosecuted were cases in which adults had committed crimes against children. And the majority of those are sex crimes.
Yeah.
And when I was prosecuting those sex crimes, children being raped and sodomized by mom's boyfriend, because 90% of the people that commit those crimes are people known to the family.
Yeah.
People that the family have entrusted the child with, right? School teacher, clergy, camp counselor, coach. It became too much for me. And again, my coping mechanism was just to have a little too much Jack Daniels.
So is that when you started,
yeah.
in the district attorney's office, drinking because you just couldn't?
I just couldn't.
You had to numb some of this, right?
Exactly.
Seth?
And it became between the alcohol or just, lots of girlfriends.
Do you have a lot of pills? You take pills?
Never did that.
Just
No.
alcohol?
Yeah.
No reefer, Mon?
No. I mean, the day that the first time I ever smoked marijuana was actually the day that they bombed the move houses.
1985.
1985, the day after Mother's Day. And I was there watching it. It was in my neighborhood, and the kids were standing there, and kid just passed me this thing.
60-second and
I didn't understand what was going on. Yeah, and just like Clinton said, I didn't inhale. I thought you just kept it in your mouth, and it blew it out. I didn't know. So, no, I never smoked much.
So,
never did
you
any
had
hard
talked.
drugs.
You had spoken about your treatment, and it's very rare that somebody just comes in there with alcohol, right?
No, we get a lot of
Or somebody told me that.
of alcohol, quite a bit, right? And we get a whole mixture of things, but alcohol is actually one of the most prevalent that I see. But it differs in different areas, right? It differs in different areas. But yeah, I got to tell you, I mean, you were talking about, prosecuting child, offenders and all that stuff. And,
Right.
and for people to understand, I've had people that struggle with PTSD from dealing with this because you're looking at the pictures and over and over again.
And again, what I had to come to learn, I really came to learn this while I was incarcerated, while I was in federal prison. I was in their residential drug abuse program. And a lot of the guys were hillbillies right, from Appalachia that were addicted to meth. Or you had black guys that might have been from the urban areas that were addicted to weed and then cocaine or whatever. And here we are. I'm a guy just addicted to like Jack Daniels or like, affection. But what I learned was how people dealt with their trauma might be different. What you chose to numb yourself from your trauma might be completely different than me. But the underlying feelings were universal. And once I broke through that and understood that, then I could listen to this meth person or this person who was like putting needles in there, and then you could still learn from them what I needed to do or how I could deal with my own triggers and cope with it in a healthy way. And that's what I teach today. I teach classes in prison 4 times a week in Philadelphia and 1 class a week out at SCI Phoenix. But my classes in Philadelphia are all about how I think I can help people prevent crime and reduce recidivism the most now by using what I learned in prison. And the students I teach in the Philadelphia jails are all co-enrolled in Options, which is a residential program for people that have substance abuse disorder.
Right.
And I address it by working on rational self-analysis, cognitive behavior therapy, but addressing the root causes so people can understand when they feel these feelings, how to deal with them, and how to deal with their triggers in healthy ways, in ways that not acting out or using as a way to numb yourself.
So while you were the district attorney of Philadelphia, on March 21st, 2017, the United States Department of Justice announced they had indicted you on bribery and extortion charges. You were disbarred a month later by court order. So you're living this, life of district attorney, big responsibility, well known, your face is known all over, and then all of a sudden this bomb is dropped on you. How did you?
Well, I've been under investigation for a while, and I had known that, and that was very traumatic, of course, right? And not knowing what's going on and being in isolation in some ways. I began consuming alcohol even more and more and more just to deal with it all in a very bad and unhealthy way. But the truth is that I should have reported every gift that I ever received pursuant to the ethics rules of the city of Philadelphia. But I had denied any criminal intent. No one got anything from me. There was no quid pro quo. Nobody got out of a DUI or a homicide or anything like that. But as you were going through earlier, I made a lot of enemies when I was the DA.
The Catholic Church?
Yeah, that was part of it. I was the first.
But you were doing good. You were doing good work,
well,
and somebody didn't like it.
Well, that's correct. And I was the first district attorney in American history to prosecute the hierarchy of the Catholic Church for actually shielding pedophile priests. I didn't just have a grand jury. We actually prosecuted the hierarchy of the Catholic Church in Philadelphia for shielding pedophile priests, and I was raised Catholic. But it was just the right thing to do because they were taking priests that were alleged to have committed sex crimes, right, generally against children, as pedophiles, and instead of notifying the children's parents, instead of notifying the police authorities, they would take that priest out of that church in Delaware County or Philadelphia, send him to St. John Vianney's, their own church-owned, supposedly therapeutic facility, and then send him to another parish in a different part of the archdiocese. Right. And they wouldn't even tell the new priest, the pastor or the nun at the new school where they put this new priest that he's a pedophile. And now they got him in charge of the CYO up at some other place. So, so I made enemies, but the main, the final straw was that it was an employee of mine who was on my security detail, and a woman that worked for me alleged that he had sexually abused her, sexually assaulted her when they went out on a date. And so I had to take him off of my security detail. And he then demanded that we put him back on the security detail. And he said if he didn't get put back on the security detail, he was going to drop dime on me. So I didn't even know what that meant. But he went as a way to head off. He thought maybe she was going to charge him with this rape.
Right. Yeah.
He went to the FBI and told them that she was a ghost employee. And so the feds began investigating that and found there was no truth to that. she was really working. But once the feds they find something, they look through every ATM purchase, every document, everything I had for like 7 years, and then they just throw anything they want against the wall to a grand jury to say, well, he got these gifts from this person and this, that, and the other, and I got indicted on 29 counts.
Right. So you go to court, and Judge Paul Diamond, who is a very tough, took you into custody immediately.
Yes, I went on trial for a week and a half. We had a great week and a half. First week, had a bad day. The feds offered my attorneys for me to plead guilty to 1 count. I still didn't want to do that because I thought even me putting my hand on the Bible saying I'm guilty of this one thing is me lying. But look, we got that. But look, we could either roll the dice and but this judge has told us that any charge they find you guilty of, he's going to give you 5 years. So do you want to come home when your daughters are in high school and college, or you want to come home when they've got kids of their own? So I said, okay. The feds had told my attorneys that I could remain on bail. I could get my affairs in order, sell the house, take the kids to therapy, maybe self-surrender in 5 months. Well, I went into court that day. I told my daughters I'd be home for lunch. I entered the plea. The judge had me handcuffed in court, taken underground, strip searched, and I lived in solitary confinement for 5 months, 152 days.
I don't know how a human being can endure that, especially when you're innocent. How come you're not resentful? I mean, I'm sure it was incredibly upsetting.
Very difficult. I lost everything. I lost my pension, my reputation, my office, my home, my law license, as you've mentioned.
Yeah.
I lost everything. All my people that I thought were friends, people I got jobs, they gave me the Heisman, right? Yeah. Treat me like I'm radioactive. And I tell people it was when I lost everything, when I learned that God was all I had, I learned that God was all I needed. And that really began a spiritual transformation for me. I had gone to church, almost every Sunday of my life, but it took me actually being in solitary to read the Bible from the very first word in Genesis to the very last word in Revelation. I did it multiple times. And that's what, and then I had to begin to become, again, with recovery and 12-step programs, I had to practice gratitude every day. If I were to wake up and just be angry about I lost this, the Fed said this, Judge Diamond did this, all these people think I stole money from my mother, if I were to think that every day, I would be in a puddle of tears all day.
And probably in a psychiatric facility.
Right? But I had to say, you know what? My friend Gary called me and wished me a happy birthday yesterday. Right? Instead of thinking about all the people that didn't, let me just focus on this positive. Right?
Good.
I was in solitary. I got 1 telephone call a month for 15 minutes while I was in solitary. That's all. That's the only communication I have with my family. I could be upset all month. I can't email. I can't do this and curse and scream or throw things, right? Or I say, you know what? I get to talk to my daughters next Tuesday. Let me just write a list of all the things I want to talk to them about. By changing your attitude to one of gratitude, can just change your entire perspective and your behavior, right? I have to control what I can control. And that's the same when it comes to addictions and people in recovery. Yeah. Control what I can control.
What we're going to do now, we have a lot of people are watching and making comments to you. We're going to do that real quick. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to find out what you are doing now.
Sounds
my
good.
Man. All right, hold on. DeQuan Dudley from Wilmington, North Carolina. Hope all is well. Thank you, guys. Mike Brill. C. Rieger says, I had a part of the civil case in our courtroom. Do you know who he is, C? I don't know who he is. I mean, I know who he is. Let me see. Allison Price Berwick. Oh, God, I can't imagine that case or those evil people. Yeah. Can't imagine. Kevin Heyer is watching. Mike Brill, alcohol is still the beast. Yeah. Mary Franzen. There's a lot here. I know we have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to find out what Seth Williams is doing now. And you're incredible, man. We'll be right back.
God is good.
All the time.
This is Clean and Sober Radio.
A cancer diagnosis can knock the wind out of you. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health can help. Our brand new Asplund Cancer Pavilion brings you 86,000 square feet of cancer-fighting science for truly comprehensive care. Backed by the strength of an NCI-designated cancer center. Call 1-800-JEFF now. The Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Abington Jefferson Health. The power to out-science cancer.
Hey, this is Mark Stein from the classic rock band Vanilla Fudge. Keep on rocking, so good luck to everybody and all the best.
888-728-9941. This is Clean and Sober Radio.
Welcome back, everybody. Clean and Sober Radio, having a great conversation with our dear friend, Seth Williams. You know, I miss smoking cigars with you, man. We got to do it again. When the weather breaks, or you'll come to the cigar lounge.
Anytime.
And we'll bring Mark with us.
That would be great. The last time we were out front, it was like 85 degrees, remember? And we were hanging out, and now it's like 30.
Now it's 30.
Yeah.
It's
good to have this guy back.
It certainly is.
Yeah. And holy mackerel. Just your story of the resilience. And let me ask you this. If you were to go back and you were to look, do you regret getting arrested for stuff that you probably weren't even guilty with and stuff? Or do you feel like you got so much out of your spiritual awakening at this point?
Well, I had to go through a period of just being upset every morning and thinking those things. Well, if I had done this, could I have done this? Could I have changed this? Could I have done that? And what I had to come to realize in some of the words, a famous poem by Maya Angelou.
Hey, wait a minute,
She
brother.
stated,
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Seth. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. I wish for everyone's continued sobriety and recovery. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
So what was I just saying? I was
if you regretted it, yeah.
The quote from Maya Angelou, what I had to learn when I was right. She said when people asked her about her past, they were trying to make her feel bad about things she had done. She said, "I have no regrets. I did then what I knew how to do. Now that I know better, I do better." And so we want people to forgive us. We need to give forgiveness, but we have to really learn how to forgive ourselves. And so while I say, I had no criminal intent, I didn't violate any federal laws, but I had a long history of making bad decisions in relationships and, hurting people that really loved me the most by my own bad decisions. And so I had to get over that. And so that's what allows me to help, do what I'm trying to do.
What are you doing these days now?
So, while I was incarcerated, I tell people I taught GED, I taught workforce development, I taught classical poetry, I learned how to play the saxophone and became the beginner saxophone instructor.
Yeah.
And so the greatest epiphany I had while I was incarcerated was that the majority of the men that I lived with and I taught were very intelligent, right? They'd gone to jail, not Yale. They'd gone to the state pen, not Penn State.
Right.
But they were smart. They were entrepreneurs, many of them. But what I learned was that most of them never had problems getting jobs. They had problems keeping jobs. So I thought that I could do a better job preventing crime and reducing recidivism by helping people learn the skills they need to keep jobs. At the same time, Stanford and Harvard had done a study. About 85% of the skills you need every day in the workplace have nothing to do with, if you're a plumber, 85% of your skills have nothing to do with turning a wrench and turning water on or off. 85% of your skills are people skills, right? People call them the soft skills as opposed to the hard skills of the actual career training. So I teach a class I created called Career Keepers. And we focus, and the students that I have in the Philadelphia Department of Prisons, I have a great relationship with Prison Commissioner Resnick and the social workers there, and I created these classes. And my students are all in Options, which is a residential substance abuse disorder program. And so I'm helping them learn how to apply those same skills for recovery for when they get home, but also teaching them conflict de-escalation. I help them write resumes, interview skills, And so I do that every day, and it's almost like a 12-step meeting. You know, I run it in the same way that I learned from the program when I was in the Army and the program when I was in the federal prison. The students all have roles and responsibilities. There's 6 different jobs the students have. They practice, you know, accountability to a group, public speaking. We give feedback to each other. The students have to accept the feedback and learn from it. And so I find it to be the most rewarding thing I've done professionally. And I also find it to be my own personal ministry, you know. And I think that, you know, God comforts us not so that we can be comfortable, but so that we can comfort others. And I take the experience that I had and try to be authentic with the men and the women that I teach in prison. And I really think it's helpful because I feel like we have to, as a prosecutor and a defense attorney and a law school professor, I try to talk about crime prevention and recidivism reduction. Right? That's almost like coming from the White Tower, right? But actually being in prison and seeing it up close and personal is a totally different experience.
Also gives you a lot of credibility.
Yeah, there you go. And so I think now, as a result of that, it's my goal to create a continuum of care where we're actually helping people that are on the inside learn the skills they need for when they get out, to learn how to keep jobs, right? Not just how to do a job, and not how to get a job, but how to keep a job. And then also we have to have I want to create called a Hope Center, places where people can go. When you come home from prison, you got to have a birth certificate, you got to have a Social Security card, you have all these things that people don't even think about. Mm-hmm. And it's so, if you don't, when I came home from prison, you have to have a place to live, you have to have a job. Did my federal probation officer help me get any of those things? No. And if I didn't, they wanted to go say, hey, we're going to tell Judge Diamond because he wants to send you right back. So we have to create a continuum of care and a protective network for people. And that's a smart thing to do. It's being smart on crime. And that helps us prevent more crime and to reduce recidivism. About 68% of all people that come home from prison, there are about 2 million people in America that are currently incarcerated, more than any other country in the world, right? If we have 68% of the people within 3 years go back. Same studies have also been shown that 14% go back if they participate in regular faith-based programming or Bible study. So we really have to do a much better job trying to change the hearts and minds of people that are incarcerated.
Do you think that what you're doing now is actually more productive than when you were the district attorney of Philadelphia?
I think so. At the micro level.
Is it more self-rewarding to you personally?
It is definitely more rewarding to me personally. A friend of mine, in this class that I have, the last class for every cohort, I bring guests, and we conduct mock interviews. And my friend Randy, and Randy has the distinction of my mother, ex-wife, current girlfriend, daughters, they all might hate me at different times. They hate each other. They all universally love Randy. Randy went into the prison, and he witnessed this class that I run and how I interact with the students and how they interact with me. And he said, this is the happiest I've ever seen you in your life.
There you go.
And he saw me at the DA's office when I was the inspector general and everything. And, he said, this is the most he's ever seen me happy. And I think it's the most professionally, most rewarding thing for me personally.
That's great.
Yeah, it's amazing, you know, a district attorney, Seth Williams, going through all this and now coming out the other side and helping people in the prisons.
Yeah. That's the ultimate giving back.
It really is. You know, it really is. And just having to go through it yourself and everything. What a story.
I just want to mention 2 people that we didn't get to. Joel Cooper's watching from Florida, and Allison Pierce Berwick is crying. Can't imagine solitary. Yeah. Gratitude was your survival. Thank you for sharing that, Seth.
Yep, 5 months all by myself. 23 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and all day Saturday and Sunday.
I couldn't do that.
I would. Did you start to kind of lose it a little bit? Like you know, you hear these stories where you start hallucinating and stuff just because there's not the people contact.
I just try to stay focused and that's why I really began to learn to control what I could control. And I began to read everything. And one of the saddest days, they had like a shakedown. They come into prison and they take everything out of your room and throw it out in the hall. They're looking for contraband. For me, I had too many books. I was only supposed to have maybe a total of 8 books, and I had more books. They took some of my books.
That's crazy.
It's terrible.
Hey, Seth Williams, thanks for being our guest today.
Thank you.
Again, thank you.
I'm going to have some of this cheesecake.
We're going to have it. Remember, if you're a loved one is struggling, help is available. Please call 1-800-662-HELP. For Clean and Sober Radio, I'm Gary Hendler.
I'm Mark Sigmund.
Thank you for joining us, and thanks for all the support you give us, and happy and healthy New Year to everyone.
I'd like to say thank you on behalf of the group and ourselves, and I hope we pass the auditioning.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Have a great year. Thanks for all the support you give us. Really appreciate it.